All right, Ike. Well, this week in the news, there is finally like a spread, like a photo
Actual
shoot.
photos,
Yeah, a
I'm told.
tasteful photos of a 130 splayed out on a chaise lounge.
Yeah.
Very tasteful, very tasteful.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think Nick is responsible for more than just a few of these. I didn't look at the photo credits. I could have simply Googled that, but chose not to. But it's a Land Rover and it's photographed. There's a chance that Nick Dibbleby was at least in the area when that
I
happened.
don't think that there has been a Land Rover that has been photographed without Nick Dimbleby being involved.
Yeah, he at least his permission is required. It's sort of like the
Yeah.
Queen. You have to be sort of ordained to take a photo of a Land Rover by Mr. Dimbleby.
Yeah, it's
So
like champagne. It's not champagne unless it comes from the Champagne region. It's
that's
not
right.
a photo of a Land Rover unless it comes from Nick Dimbleby.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, the 130 finally pictured in
Mhm.
real photos and compared to its younger siblings, older
Mhm.
sibling, I don't know, whatever, its shorter siblings, the 110 and the 90. And it's a big boy. It's got a lot of space back there. There's a great photo of a gentleman and his rope hanging out in the very back of the car. He and his rope look very, very comfortable back there.
There is at least room in the back for one person and one package of rope in
Yeah.
the back of a Defender 130. But looking at the silhouettes of the three different wheelbases, the 90, the 110, and the 130, the 130 and the 90 are the most appealing to me personally.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
The 110, it looks truncated, I would
Yep.
say, in
Yep.
my personal opinion. I'm so glad that they kept the signature panel throughout the range of
Yep.
models.
Oh, yeah.
That is my favorite part of the car.
Oh,
I
without
know it's
question.
also your favorite part. In fact, I've seen that you have a signature panel from a
Yeah.
new generation Land Rover that you're
That's right.
trying to
Yeah.
fit to your NAS 90.
Yeah, I think, there's this whole movement to delete the signature panel from the new cars. And I've decided, no, we're going to reverse that. We're going to take all those deleted signature panels and we're going to apply them to classic cars. I think that's really where it's an unexpected move, but I think there is dollars to be made, literally single dollars to be made in doing that. I think you could retrofit a signature panel to just about any car. I mean, I think we could
Freelander
lash it.
signature panel.
We could lash it to the soft top of an 80-inch. We could, we'll figure it out. We'll get it on there.
Yeah,
Experts in adding signature panels to your car.
yeah, you just need some ABS adhesive and you're good
Yeah,
to go.
it's fine. Yeah, a little
The
of that liquid nails and sticker on there.
For those of you that aren't familiar with the signature panel, it's the 8.5 by 11 square of plastic on the side of the new Defender range that is extremely square. It's usually
Yeah,
body colored and
yeah.
it has a small Land Rover logo in it.
Mhm.
It yeah, yeah, that's pretty much all it is.
It is pretty much there. On the black cars, it is invisible, and so, if you wanna see what the car looks like without it, and you can delete it from the 90. There's an
Yes.
option to delete it from the 90 because the window arrangement in those, cars is different, so you can check a box and they will take it off for you, but it is not deletable on the 110, and as the 130 isn't in the configure tool yet, I don't know if it is or not, but, there are a couple different companies now that are making, you can just pop it off. There's 4 little plastic, body mounts that allow you
Mhm.
to actually take it off, but then there's 4 little body mount
Holes.
holes. Yeah,
Mhm.
and so there's a couple companies making fillers that you just sort of like an IKEA piece of furniture where you have that little sticker that looks like wood that you just sort of stick over there. The
Yeah, just
same
put a
thing.
dowel in and saw it off, and
Yeah,
then put a
and
little
just
black
yeah,
marker on it, and
yeah,
done.
just to Sharpie the end of it. It's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's no big deal.
perfect.
Yeah, no big deal at all. But no, I mean, plenty of room in the back of that thing. And man, when both rows of seats are folded down, it's a big car. There's lots of room in there for all your shenanigans. So we'll leave it to see if they have if they've got a new roof rack coming out for it, if they've got all the sort of 130 length accessories. We'll have to wait and see.
It's going to be the same roof rack. It's just going to have like a little extension on
Just the tiny little wings on the back. Well, the current roof rack is cut out around the sensor package on the roof, right around all the antennas. There's like a big cutout for it. It looks like the back of a clawed foot hammer.
it.
That you've got kind of sunk around the back of the antennas, which is, I guess, it's kind of cool. I know that some other rack manufacturers are just making the rack significantly shorter so that they don't interfere with that thing. So I guess, I mean, I don't know what you're going to put out on those little outriggers on the back there, but hey, to each his own, whatever.
A bag of rope, perhaps.
Oh yeah, for sure. Plenty of opportunity to store bags of rope in this particular car. So yeah, so we thought we would talk about what is actually maybe possibly everybody's real favorite segment is the what to look for when buying a Land Rover. And this week, as we've already done, generally speaking, old ass Land Rovers and what to look for when buying those. We dabbled in the 80-inch Land Rover, a little bit of the Series 1, the very early Series 1s, and what to look for there. And we'll probably circle back to sort of later gen Series 1s as well. But a question that certainly I get a lot, I'm sure you get to an excessive degree, especially after we took a bunch of Series 2s out on a little winter's drive with Bob Ives. And if you haven't seen that video, it is up on our YouTube channel. Mr. Bob Ives and his son Dan and Linus and Ike and I and Jenna and all the folks from the Pangolin 4x4 shop all headed up into the wilderness, into the snow, and coincidentally, it wasn't on purpose, but just coincidentally, a bunch of Series 2s, and had a great time. So today, what to look for when buying a Series 2 Land Rover. And for those who, the easiest way, as I was asked the other day, well, how do you tell a Series 2 from a Series 3? Most people can tell a Series 1 from a Series 2 because there's a little shoulder on it, the little bump that rolls down the entire door, which is of course one of the things that when the Land Rover became successful, the powers that be at the great Rover company and later British Leyland looked at the car and said, well, I think it needs a little bump there on the door. It needs a little boopity doo
Need
down the
some
door.
hips.
Need some hips, and that's where your knees go when you're driving the car. It gives you all this extra knee room. But the Series 2 obviously started with the that was the first car to have the little hip, and then obviously thousands of other differences from the series 1s. But Series 3 has a different door hinge, has a different dash, has all kinds of different things. The Series 2 is actually a lot closer to the Series 1 in its sort of fit and finish and interior finishers and stuff than it is the Series 3. The Series 3 is a much more, much more of a product of the early 70s, as it's got lots of little plastic bits and stuff in it. So the Series 2 is an all metal dash. So when you suddenly come to a stop, there is no semi padded plastic, just razor sharp metal to smash your head in. So yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, the Series 2 has a lot of features which are different than the Series 1s, of course. They carry over the metal dash from the later Series 1s. That part is the same. The thing that is interesting, I think, to a lot of people when they sit in a Series 2 and sit in a Series 1 is the Series 1 actually seems more spacious, even though the Series 2 is a little bit wider.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for that is most people they taper. Their shoulders are wider than their hips, and so the Series 2 actually got narrower at the top. So they tapered the roof. They made the roof narrower, and then it tapers down to the belt line, and then it has the hip. So where your body actually sits, or where you exist in the car, is smaller on a Series 2 than it is on Series 1. And the windshield is a little shorter on a Series 2. So it kind of feels a little more cramped, at least to me. The Series 1 has flat sides. It's the same width from top to bottom. And so the Series 2, since it's narrower at the top, it feels a little more cramped, in my opinion. I always feel like I have to stick my elbow out the window.
Yep.
And I
It
think that's one
started the
thing that
tradition of using the windowsill as an armrest in Land Rovers. I
kind
find they
of,
don't do that as much in the Series 1. Also, the window's so much higher in the Series 1, it's uncomfortable to do that, but you also don't feel the natural need to stick your arm out the window. Not that I have the door tops on mine all that
yeah.
often, but yeah, it's a storied Land Rover tradition of opening the window to give your elbow somewhere to go.
Yeah, totally, totally. These cars they had a lot of changes that were substantial mechanical changes and structural changes, and then there was some cost cutting measures to
Yeah.
offset that, and so you'll see a little bit um, of a lack of quality in some of the finishes that they were like, oh, well, maybe we should cut some cost here, but
Hmm.
we've added some features there. So one of those is maybe the doors,
Hmm.
most notably probably is the doors. A Series 1 door never rusts. The previous generation door, it is galvanized steel.
Yeah.
And they said, well, maybe we'll save some money. And they stopped doing that. And so the Series 2 and later Series 2A doors, they are ungalvanized steel frames with aluminum over them. And this started a long and glorious tradition of rusty Land Rover doors.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And they
To
carry,
the late Defenders, still
yeah,
same problem. Same
yeah,
problem.
they carry that through pretty much the rest of the utility models. I think eventually there was a lawsuit, saying that didn't prepare your materials well, and
Hmm.
they lost that lawsuit, and as a result, they made some zinc coated doors
Yeah,
in the late Defenders.
yeah,
But previous to that, really badly corroded. So that's one thing you want to look for in a Series 2 is the door top and the door bottom.
yeah,
Look at the actual bottom of the door bottom.
yep.
See if it's rusted or has more drainage holes than maybe it came with from the factory.
Some
Eh,
improvised drainage holes in there. Yeah.
yeah, and of course with the hips on the bulkhead, it's obviously a redesign from the Series 1, and so they have a tendency to rust in a couple of different places than the
Hmm.
earlier cars.
Hmm.
And the footwells, where the wheels kick up the spray from the road, that's certainly a problematic area for these cars. The upper footwell on a Series
Hmm.
1 is kind of the problem area for those cars, and the lower footwell tends to be the problem for the Series 2s and 2As. That bulkhead design kind of carried through.
Hmm.
There's some differences in the twos and 2As that are subtle,
Hmm.
and a lot of people aren't familiar with those. And so, if you're buying a Series 2 or looking at a Series 2, some of those may enter into your decision making process. The engine, for example, is one of the big things that they introduced with the Series 2. It's a 2.25 liter as opposed to the 2 liter, which
Hmm.
was used in the Series 1s and very early Series 2s. Now the 2.25 liters is a totally different design. It's overhead valve instead of an F head, inlet over exhaust design.
Hmm.
And the first generation of those have a different bearing design and a different water pump. And so those bearings are a little bit more expensive. Those water pumps are a little bit more expensive. So, rebuilding or refreshing one of those engines in a Series 2 is a little more expensive.
Hmm. Hmm.
The gearbox is largely the same design. There's some minor differences, but rebuilding the gearbox is pretty much the same. And if you're looking at any Land Rover, it's nice to have a good gearbox. The engines are
Yep.
pretty durable.
Yep.
Gearbox is less durable than the engine, I
Hmm.
would say. There are some neat features on a Series 2 which were introduced for the Series 2 and then later deleted on the Series 2A. The knob operated vent lifters is one
Yep.
of those. There's some heavier duty fittings, the bolt on door stops, kind of carried over from the Series 1s to Series 2, but deleted on the Series 2As. They did a spot welded kind of affair on those. The
Yep.
tailgate hinges and hardware are all heavier duty on the Series 2 than the 2A. They started to get thinner and use some cost cutting measures. They were like, oh, maybe these are a little burlier than we maybe need. The Series 2 firewall to fender fasteners are
Hmm.
actual, fine threaded bolts instead of Acme thread bolts, which they carried through
Yeah.
Series 2A and
2A
Series
and 3
3
and all the
models.
way to
But
Defender. Yeah.
in terms of the things that you look for, you rust is the big one.
Hmm.
Rust makes the cars expensive to rebuild, and largely, the parts availability for these cars still remains good, and the backwards parts compatibility from the later models makes them pretty easy to restore, and
Hmm.
they're fun to drive. They're pretty reliable. Like I said, parts availability are good. It's definitely a good model for an enthusiast. Maybe a little less esoteric than a Series One.
Hmm.
I love Series Ones; they're my favorites. But for the average person, maybe a Series Two is a good choice, good balance between those two models. And Series Twos are certainly neat cars. They have those big square apron panels in the
Yep.
front. They have a few little cosmetic features that make them or set them apart from a 2A. I like those cars.
Well, and the the iconic Series Two, Series 2A door hinges, which is the actual logo of the Series 2A, so the Series 2 Club, is that
Mm-hmm.
one super unique feature is their crazy door hinges, which are very neat, and they were
Yeah,
shared with the Mini and a few other British cars, but they're a really neat style design. They sort of look like two little arms kind of interlocked together, and that
they're
was
very
gone as of the Series 3, and then never came back. It was gone all the way through Defender. Defender used the same similar hinge,
almost
later on.
true. Almost
Mm,
true. The rear door kept that same
right, it
door
has
hinge
that one
style.
little style hinge. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. All the
kept
way through.
that
Yeah,
kind of through, but that design is very neat. It's kind of an organic shape,
yeah.
and the mini one is just a little bit
A
smaller.
little bit smaller.
It's
Yeah, it's like a
so
little tiny version of it.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
really
it's
cool.
super
Yeah.
cute,
Yeah, yeah, it's a
super
really
cute.
neat. It must have been a found part then, because there are a few British cars that use like different sizes of that same, looks like the same hinge, just in a few different sizes. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be one of those manufacturing artifacts that kind of continues on or stays in use
Yeah,
through a number of different applications. It certainly looks like it could be a gate hinge or whatever, but I'm not sure about the
yeah.
the
Who
origin of
knows?
that
Yeah, right.
particular
Yeah,
part. But it
yeah,
is a neat one, and it has a nice little replaceable brass ball. So when
yeah,
they wear, you can rebuild them, and I think those are like a few bucks. They're
yeah.
super
Super
cheap,
cheap. Yeah, easy to
and
do.
certainly a neat door design and door hinge design that is not shared with the later cars, unfortunately, because it was really cool. The doors actually open kind of perpendicular to the
Hmm.
the opening of the door instead of the Series 3s, which kind of have a little bit of
Yeah,
a
they kind of
raise the
they,
back edge
they
of the
gull
door.
wing just a tiny little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
and
a
you
tiny
you
bit.
can always tell, it's semi popular. This could be a Rover faux pas, putting Series 3 hinges on a Series 2A or
Ooh,
a Series 2. The door hinges on a Series 3 open at a little bit of an angle. I think
yeah,
they thought that would help you shut it, give it a little
yeah.
little weight
A
as it
little run
falls
at it.
closed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But the problem is it gets closer at the top than it does at
yeah,
the bottom, and
yeah,
inevitably when the stop wears out, it puts a dent in the
yeah.
door, in that bulkhead, the
Right,
the A
right.
pillar on the
Yeah,
car.
yeah,
And so, all the cars that have had that done, they all have a dent in the bulkhead,
right.
which is unsightly in my opinion. I like
Yeah.
the horizontal opening
I do
doors
too.
instead
I
of the
think they're a neat,
angled
yeah, it's a
doors.
neat door, and a neat hinge, and yeah, and the Series 3 ones are awful. The pin in the inside rusts, and then there's no like, you got to replace the hinge, because you can't, like, you can try to pound that thing. I mean, they're not really serviceable. Whereas, yeah, the Series 2 hinges you could service sort of forever. I mean, as long
Definitely.
as it would wear, would just, you could replace them, and yeah, it's very cool. It's a neat
Yeah, yeah, I
design.
really like those. Anyway, the Series Twos they're great cars, and very serviceable, very usable even still today. And
And the
so
later
get your
cars are negative Earth, so you don't need to deal with the spooky voodoo of positive Earth cars. You can find a
spooky
Series
voodoo.
2
I
that's
feel like the positive Earth cars, in my opinion, are easier to deal with because they don't have like instrumentation that works on 10 volts, so they
yeah,
don't have a voltage stabilizer and all this
yeah,
wacky stuff. The old ones are just 12 volts. The
yeah,
circuits are very simple and robust and reliable. I mean, I've got some of those cars that are 70 years old and they still have like their original equipment still work great.
hmm,
They
hmm.
start to get funky, like the electric temperature gauges that
Hmm.
are notoriously unreliable,
Oh,
and
terrible. Yeah.
those fuel gauges that have the voltage stabilizer to dampen them. Like all that stuff it becomes less reliable
As
the more
soon as the
complex it
multi
gets.
gauge was it was introduced, everything went downhill from there. And those are legendarily annoyingly bad, and yeah, the electronic ones are the worst. And if your engine
Anyway,
has ever gotten really really hot and you have a cheap temp sender, chances are that temp sender got cooked and it'll never work properly again. So you got to throw it away and put in a new one.
almost 100% of overheating problems in series Land Rovers are on those negative ground trucks,
Negative
and they have
ground
a
trucks, yeah.
bad sending unit
They
for
have
the
a bad
temperature
sender,
gauge.
yeah. That's anytime anybody's ever like, "Oh man, my series car runs really hot." They say, "Well, have you laser gunned the thermostat? What's the actual temperature?" And they're like, "Oh, well, it's this. It's fine." Like, "Have you ever replaced the temp sender?" I'm like, "Just buy a box of them." And
Yeah.
it just every so often, probably just replace it because they're garbage. If they get a little bit too hot, then that's it. They're done. So yeah, unfortunately, but yeah, no, all good. And like we've always said, make sure you get pictures of all the parts of the car that could be really bad before you waste your time going out to see it, and making sure that
Oh yeah.
you know all that
Assume
sort
any
of
part of
business.
the car that you can't see in pictures is bad.
It's totally bad. It's totally bad. And if somebody says like, "Oh yeah, I've just I don't drive it that often. I just don't have the time," like it's because it doesn't work. That's why you don't drive it that
That's
often.
that's a good chance. Or
Yeah.
if they say the engine has been rebuilt and you're like, "Well, when was it rebuilt and by whom?" And they're like, "Well, the previous owner told me that." You're
Yeah, they
like,
told me that. Yeah.
"Yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah,
about that."
yeah, 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 yeah. If you can see, liquid gasket oozing out of every orifice of the engine, then yeah, somebody's been in there. That's
You
good.
know,
That's a good sign.
interestingly, RTV and liquid gasket are inversely proportional to how well something is sealed. If
That's
there's a
exactly
lot
right.
of it on something, it almost inevitably leaks badly.
It's a guarantee. It's a guarantee that it's gonna leak. Yeah, it's a good point. That's actually a good sign that if the engine is covered in RTV, then the fucking thing's gonna leak everywhere.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like a guarantee. Yeah, yeah, that's a good
It's
sign.
like a sunroof. It has RTV on it. It's
You're
not
done.
sealed.
Yeah, you're done. There's no way that thing. It's
No.
it's unsealable. So, speaking of unsealed sunroofs, today's tip top tool tip is a particular tool that is geared towards those looking to replace windows on their
Yeah.
Land Rover.
Yeah, the fixed glass window is something that was used on a number of different Land Rovers for a number of different years, and typically, this was used on Discovery Alpine
Hmm.
windows. It was
Hmm.
used on Defenders. It was used on Series cars all the way back to
Hmm.
the Series One, and it's a two-piece seal.
Hmm.
This is on a static window, a non-sliding window,
Hmm.
and it's got a main seal which holds the glass into a aluminum opening in the bodywork,
Hmm.
and then it has a filler strip which spreads that apart and locks it and seals it into place. And these seals are really time consuming to install if you don't have the tool. If you've
That's
got the
right.
tool, it doesn't take that long. And we're going to talk about a couple things that can make your life so much easier. And we had a recent complaint from a future guest
That's
about
right.
about this process, and apparently took him hours and hours, and was really aggravating. And you know we're here to help him
That's right.
in retroactively, right?
That's
So
right.
the
It's
next
already
time,
done. He's done. But
yeah, the
yeah,
next
yeah,
time he
yeah.
does it, it'll go way easier.
Those
And the
seals are good for about 25 years. So you're good next time around, sometime in 2040. Yeah, this will be a really useful tip.
the trick to it is having the right tool, and there's a special filler strip tool, and that's exactly what it's called, filler strip tool. And it's
Hmm.
it's cast. The best kind is cast,
Yeah,
and the inner diameter is the same shape as the filler strip,
it's sort of a weird
and the
little
outer,
teardroppy orificey kind of looking thing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it looks like Steven's orifice on the
yeah.
inside.
It's
And then
modeled after. That's
and then
that's yeah, yeah,
the outside is like, I would call it a spade shape, like from
yeah,
the playing card. It's
yeah.
pointed at one end, and then it increases, and it's got a groove that fits
Yeah.
inside the seal.
Hmm.
And this, with a lot of like glass lubricant or silicone spray.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
use a glass cleaner product, which
Hmm.
is kind of
Hmm.
nice and doesn't leave a residue.
Yeah.
um, that is the best thing for this job. So the outer seal, pretty straightforward to get into
Hmm.
place. We use a couple of different tools to get the seal over the glass and put it in
Hmm.
the aperture. And those are just plastic tools. Sometimes they're referred to as bone tools, even
Hmm.
though they're made of like a high density plastic, and they come in a
Hmm.
few different shapes. You can get them at a paint shop, automotive
Yeah.
paint supply, or a glass specialty shop.
Hmm.
A few of those and some of that glass spray or glass lubricant goes a long way to getting the window in the aperture. That
Hmm.
part is relatively straightforward. It's getting the
Hmm.
locking strip into
Yeah.
place, and this filler strip tool is key to
Yeah,
that.
because trying to shove it in there with your fingers is
Oh,
just
or screwdrivers or
oh
anything else. Oh,
god,
it takes hours and
it's
hours and
just the
hours.
worst.
And so this and I'm not exaggerating. This turns a 3-hour job into like a 20-minute job.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really doesn't take that long if you have the right tool, and it's such a relief to do it. The first ones I did, back when I was in high school, it just took
Hmm. Oh yeah,
ages and
it's the worst.
ages to
It's the
do,
worst. Yeah,
and your
it's the worst.
fingers are sore, and
Oh,
it's brutal.
you got to
But
push it in, and you're trying to get, and you got a tool. Maybe it kind of works, and you're soapy because you're trying to get it in there, and somebody told you soap made it easier. But with your hands, the more lubricated the surface is, the harder it is to do because you have no force again, and everything's slipping every. It's terrible.
yeah,
Another thing, I like to run a little bit of paracord inside of the window molding. Then put the window molding
mhm,
into the hole and then pull the paracord out from the inside, and it'll flip the inside seal over the metal lip very
yeah.
quickly, and then you don't have to do that. You don't have to do the little pinchy bits with your finger around there either, so you just run a
That
shoelace
that
or
is
something, and
helpful, especially if you have a person to help you put a
yeah,
little pressure on the
yeah, just
glass.
push on it a little bit.
Because
Yeah.
if you don't have that pressure on the glass and you pull the cord
It
out,
doesn't
it
work.
won't pull
Yeah, it
through
doesn't pull
the
in.
opening.
Yeah, I like to just start with a corner, kind of get it poked in, and then start with the paracord. And the paracord's already really slippery because it's like that nylon, so it slips in pretty easily. And
Mhm.
you can do the back kiddie windows on a Defender by yourself. You can put one hand on the back and do it, but anything more than that, it's impossible. Especially the rear window on a door, like on a series door or a Defender door. Oh, that thing's a monster. It's super heavy and it's super awkward. And it's Chris and I finally got the things that you use to move glass in a Leslie Nielsen movie, so that the guy's moving it across the street, that inevitably somebody smashes through it with a bicycle or car. Remember the one that I think OJ is in the mall, but didn't he he's going down, he's just coming out of the hospital, and he like rolls down the hill in a wheelchair, and he like goes through, guys keep like walking panes of glass across the street, and he keeps smashing through these different panes of glass. It's a great movie. It's Leslie. I think that's Naked Gun, the first one. I think, right? OJ's in
And
all of them though, isn't he?
that's a really
Before all
important
the
thing.
murder.
You've got to
Before the murder.
watch those. You have to watch the entire Naked Gun series before you put in a pane of glass.
That's it's very important. Gotta
Yeah,
know.
you need that.
Yeah, it's good to know. But yeah, the Harbor Freight sells the window suction cuppers, which makes it much easier.
Mhm.
Specifically the back. I mean, if you were to do a windshield as well, but the back glass, which can break relatively easily. That is heavy, and yeah, that's a 2-player game for sure. But yeah, it's a great tool. It's a great tip. And yeah, so I have a rear window that I need to replace. So I'm gonna have to get on that. Maybe we'll shoot a little. Maybe we'll shoot a little video. Put it on the TikTok. Get all those TikTok views of the window
You can watch Steven flossing and using the
at the
window
same
suction
time.
cup tool
At the same
on
time.
TikTok. If you're a patron.
If you're patron, you can watch that. Yeah, I'll do it yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Well, yeah, speaking of patron, we have the ongoing series of Tip Top Tarp Tips going up here every Tuesday, Tip Top Tarp Tuesday. And yeah, so stay tuned for those. Man, I mean,
Tomorrow.
there are some great ones. God, there's some good ones. Yeah, tomorrow I can't even talk about tomorrow's. It's so exciting. So exciting.
It's a good one.
The bonus Tip Top Tarp shopping video that we put up, there was apparently a contractor who's been a general contractor for 40 years, and he's
Mhm.
like, I totally agree with this tarp tip. Well, there you go. So it's not just Ike, it's the construction industry agrees that only the gray ones are any good. Are only
Yeah,
good.
it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
It's true.
And
That's
Dixon
really
apparently has killed someone and wrapped it up in the black one. Just based on his comments, there's a lot of knowledge there
not
that
surprised.
seems, yeah, it just seems it's suspect.
For
It's
those of you who
suspect.
aren't familiar, Dixon Kenner is the editor of the Ottawa Valley Land Rover Club newsletter, which is a
Yeah,
great newsletter, and he's
nobody knows what happened to the previous editor.
that's right.
So
That's
there you
right.
go.
I
There you
think
go.
he's responsible.
Could be, could be. But yeah, we gotta get Dixon on the show at some point. That's gotta be. We gotta get him on the get him. We'll get the Ministry of Booking and the Ministry of Scheduling on that right away. Get the team in the basement to work on scheduling Dixon. So speaking of the team in the basement, to wrap up today's show, I would say this is one of the most controversial segments that we have here on the show. Imitation Land Rover.
Yeah,
There is a guarantee that no matter what car we pick, the most obscure, the least successful, the most hated 4x4 on the planet, that is literally a one-to-one copy of a Land Rover, there is somebody out there that will troll us for saying that
it's true.
their favorite car is an imitation Land Rover, and this is no exception, and will
No,
certainly garner the scorn of many an Alfa Romeo fan, because today
yeah.
we are talking about the Alfa Romeo Matta. What's a Matta with you?
Oh man, I knew it was coming, and
Yeah.
I still
Oh.
cringed. Still cringe. Yeah, the Alfa Romeo Matta is, it was a car that was conceived in 1951 and built in the early 50s for a few years, and it has a lot of Land Rover characteristics.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you look at it, especially from the back, it looks very much like a Land Rover. It's a handsome car. It really is.
Yeah,
It
it's a
has
cool looking car. Yeah.
kind of a Land Cruisery Jeepy type
Yep.
fenders
Yep.
and a Land Rovery hood, and then a grill panel that has the sort of the Alfa Romeo sort of
Yeah. Kidney
kidney
shape,
shaped.
diamondy sort of kidney shape. Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, a neat looking car, but when you start to look at it, you can definitely see a lot of Land Rover influence. It's got the grab bar across the dash, similar to a
Hmm.
Series One. The
Yep.
instruments, however, are in front of the
Yep.
driver, behind the steering wheel, so that is a difference. But when you start to look at the rear load space, it's got the spare tire mount there.
Hmm.
It's got
Hmm.
the spare tire mount on the hood, like a Land
Yep.
Rover, which is
Yep.
definitely a Land Rover-esque feature. The doors, they open in reverse. They're
Backwards.
suicide doors. Yeah, but the shape of them is very much like a Series One Land Rover. The height, the
Hmm.
proportion of the
Hmm.
door, very Series
Especially
One
the
Land Rover.
window with the removable window top could be interchangeable, I think, with
Oh
a
yeah,
Series
yeah, it
One
really
Land
is.
Rover. Like, it really is very close. It's
The
very close.
windshield frame is
Yep.
is looks like it came off of a Land Rover. The
Hmm.
tailgate, rear body, the wheel wells, all the shape
Hmm.
of that and proportion of those things are very much like the Land Rover.
And
And
certainly the canvas hood,
yeah.
the way it lashes to the side of the
Mhm.
body, the shape, the slope towards the windshield. It is I that may really be interchangeable with the Land Rover. I mean, it looks
It looks really
startlingly
similar.
similar. Yes, startling.
Yeah.
Now the difference, though, of course, is that the Mazda was available in a like a bright blue color with red seats and a red roof in classic Italian fashion. You could get it with quite a bit of flair. And then, of course, you can get the green and tan that literally looks exactly like a Series 1. In fact, some of the people selling their Matas online have strategically placed them like in front of a brick wall with the green and tan hood. And quickly scrolling through, you wouldn't be at all remiss to think that wait, is that a Series 1? Because they're leaning into the fact that it does look an awful lot like a Series 1, and they seem to be going for a pretty reasonable amount of money. I mean, they're in the $50,000 and $60,000 range for a nicely restored Mata, which is that's a very specific crowd that's looking for one of those guys. Actually, no, Michael, a friend here who has a ton of old Italian and European cars, but he has like four Matas. I think that's like all of them in North America, but they're all old, jeeped up war looking sort of ones. He rents them out to movies, but yeah, I've never seen so many in my life. I'd only ever seen one before that, and then Michael's got a shed full of them. So
They're a neat looking car. They have a similar displacement engine, 1.9 liters
mhm.
instead of the 2 liter that was used on Series One. They have a dual overhead cam,
Yeah,
engine that's installed. I'm assuming it's related to the one that's used in the cars. It's
yeah,
got a little more horsepower than the Land Rover engine. I think
hmm
64
60, yeah,
horsepower,
something
something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
But significantly less torque. They're definitely a higher RPM motor, probably
Yeah.
better suited to an automobile than a
Hmm.
than a four-wheel drive. Neat,
Yeah, like
neat cars.
4,800 RPM or something is where it makes that 90 foot-pounds. Like, can you imagine what that sounds like? Like, that's just gotta be brutal.
I can imagine it.
Yeah, it's just
But
brutal.
it definitely takes some cues from the Land Rover, and for that reason, it is definitely an imitation Land Rover.
And for that reason, everyone will hate us for saying that. So, without further ado, please go ahead on over to Instagram and start commenting negatively on how, in fact, the Mata is the origin of all 4x4s or
Yeah,
something. And
for
can't
those
wait
of
to
you
start
sending
arguing.
hate mail, send it directly to Stephen
Yeah,
Stephen Barris
yeah, PO
on
box. Yeah,
Instagram.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, send it right my way. I'm happy to delete your hate mail about the Mata. But yeah, no, it's a cool car. If you have an opportunity to see one, they're really neat. Backwards opening doors and all that sort of stuff. They've got some really interesting, very unique features. And because it is an Alpha, it will only be running 15% of the time. So
That's pretty
the rest of
generous.
the it's true, it's true. Brief periods of ecstasy followed by sustained periods of frustration. That's what the that's the Italian way.
That's true. Sometimes they say British cars, they don't run because of deferred maintenance. People don't always maintain them. But Italian cars, they might not run because it's Tuesday.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, they're
Just
built that
you
way.
never know. You really
Yeah,
never know.
I mean, where do you really need to go that is so important? Like that's maybe tomorrow we'll see. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I don't know. Depends.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, please do head on over to the Instagram, as there is a river of content going up there every week. Fantastic tarp videos, interesting things. We've had some folks share some photos of their T-shirts, stickers, Tiny Ike keychains. Oh man, if you have some underpowered era gear and you want to share it on the old internet, it really does make our day. It's nothing puts a smile on Ike's face like seeing someone in a one size too small underpowered hour T-shirt. He's a big fan. He's a big fan. So with that, we'll wrap it up for this week. Unfortunately, because of all the tiny T-shirt talk, we have run out of time to have Ike review Nando's, of which there are
Damn it.
3 in the United States. They are starting their westward progress towards Ike,
What?
opening stores across the United States to eventually get one in Eugene, Oregon, so that Ike will finally review the brand. I think that is what they're looking for to really tip things over the top here in the United States.
Probably.
But unfortunately, Ike is a fairly tantric peri peri chicken restaurant reviewer. So you're
It's
just
gonna
going to have to
happen
wait.
next episode, probably.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. All right, Ike. Well, as always, it's been a slice. We will talk to you next week.
All right. See you on the trail.